This weekend's card, headlined by Amanda Lemos taking on Jessica Andrade, is an absolute doozy. And listen, coming up this weekend, Alexandr Romanov now taking on recently released Chase Sherman. He was released about 5 days ago.
Guess who's back? Back again.
Gets re-up, double
Sherman's
my money.
back. Tell a friend. No.
Tell a friend, I guess. I mean, it's got me stuttering. I can't believe it. But what I can't believe is the fact that coming up this weekend at welterweight, Preston Parsons and Evan Elder will be squaring off. It's pressure versus the Phenom. And either Preston Parsons or Evan Elder, barring a no contest or a draw, will have a win in the UFC's octagon. So realistically, it is a bit of a hodgepodge of a card. But this is one of those ones. It is a surefire can't miss, because when you have a guy like Evan Elder coming in on 4 days' notice, representing Sanford MMA, it should be an exciting one. And when you go out and you watch some of the tape on the short notice, Phenom, he's 7-0 as a pro. He was booked to take on a guy that you know and love coming up at FAC 13, and Cody Pfister, a guy who had 4 fights in the UFC, lost to one of Matt's favorites, James Moontassery. The man himself also has a finish loss to Sage Northcutt. But that's enough about Pfister, because Evan Elder picked up a big win in his FAC debut back at FAC 11. He had Grant Dawson in his corner, who's now at Sanford MMA. And you see it out of Evan Elder. A lot of pictures on the old Instagrams training with Michael Chandler, a lot of the guys around the lightweight, welterweight mark. So for me, I look at Evan Elder. We'll break down his style. We'll break down some of his fights. But the guy looks like a thick guy at lightweight. I'm eager to see what he looks like coming in this week at welterweight, taking on Preston Parsons, who's going to have a little bit of a height advantage, a little bit of a reach advantage, but a guy who is a welterweight.
You basically just proved my, NBA draft night theory all in one right now. What was the first thing you brought up about Evan Elder? Wasn't his striking? Wasn't his wrestling? Wasn't his grappling? It was how thick he is. It wasn't an actual skill that he does bring to the UFC. And what we look at when we do talk about Evan Elder is, I remember how critical we both were about Chaos Williams upon his entry to the UFC. We looked at his level of competition, and it was lacking up until he got to the big show. Now, I think we all realize just how good Chaos Williams is. He has legit power. But at least what we could point to on his resume was, hey, the guys who he's beating aren't great, but the way he's beating them is absolutely undeniable. And when you do go back and watch some of Evan Elder's tape, it's not that he isn't able to get finishes on the regional scene. It's just that when you do watch the fights, they're not all that impressive, nor are they against the highest levels of competition. And what our big thing is, you might fight guys who don't have the best combined record. That's something we talk about a lot, like the combined records of their opponents before they get to the UFC. But 9 times out of 10, these fighters look great against their subpar levels of competition. And then when they start to get tested at the UFC level, we get a more realistic expectation for where they should be in this organization. Evan Elder didn't really stand out amongst the different fighters on the regional scene. And yes, he is undefeated right now. And I know you'll talk a little bit more about the rankings, or just about his resume. But you look up and down some of the guys who he's fought, not a single one really stands out as saying, wow, that's a quality win that really punches your ticket to the UFC.
There's one quality fight. He did fight Luis Pena way back in 2016.
As an amateur fight.
As an amateur, lost that one by decision. He spent a lot of time with Shamrock FC, did Elder. He's a guy that represents Hillsboro, Missouri, and now he's at Deerfield Beach, obviously. But you look at it up and down, had a tidy little amateur record at 6-1. You really like to see that development,
and it's always interesting, too, because, how much stock do we put in amateur records? I never really know personally, because sometimes you have people who have a very nice-looking amateur record, but they don't really fight like a well-seasoned fighter.
No, you know what?
And then there's some fighters who they don't have a great amateur record, take a little bit of time off between their amateur career and their professional career, and they kind of put a few things together.
I'll give everybody 3 examples really quick. So the 3 that I have, Mohamed Makayev, obviously IMMAF world champion, European champion, and a guy who went 23-0 and then became a pro, and it really translated. Young guy, grew up in MMA, grew up wrestling as well. Very, very impressive blue chip prospect. Had a great debut against Cody Durden. Another guy who's hit the skids in the UFC, but I really like what I've seen, is Darian Weeks. Darian Weeks had a super, super credentialed amateur career, also went the IMMAF route. As a pro, he was great before he came into the UFC. Short notice, Barber loses. Then he takes on Ian Gary. Pretty competitive fight for Darian Weeks, though, in that one, even though he loses. And then I'll give you another guy. You look at Jorgen De Castro, and I know he's with Eagles FC right now, but he's going to fight Junior Dos Santos, so get excited about that. But as an amateur, it was bad. The start of his pro career wasn't that great either, and then all of a sudden he turns it on, gets into the UFC, finishes Justin Tafa off to the races, and then he's just not able to kind of capture that same glory. But another guy where it kind of shows you that amateur records don't really matter. But when you do look at it for Evan Elder, debuts against another guy in a pro debut, wins that fight in the first round. Another pro debut, second time out, wins that one in the first round. Takes on Oral Fisher, who was 0-1, finishes him in the first round, and he knocks him down multiple times in that fight. Shows off a really flashy game. Takes on Keegan Gemrich, beats him by decision, who was 2-1. That was back in 2020. And then his next time out takes on CJ Hunter, who was 6-1, beats him by decision. But in that fight, I mean, really, it was all Elder. Drops him early, has to defend some submissions in that one, but he's able to work his own takedowns. Takes on Paris Padilla, knocks him out by one of the most hellacious. They have it as a knee on topology. He kicks him in the head and drops him hard and heavy. Like, he looked great in the 20 seconds you get to see him. And then on short notice at FAC 11 back in December, takes on Marcus Andruja. And in that one, it's a 3-round showcase for Evan Elder. But really, when I look at it, Matt, the guy's a stand-up fighter. The guy fights, and he can emulate. The worst thing that I hate is when commentators that are doing these fights go, oh, it's a Jackson Wink fighter. They do this. And it's an Extreme Couture fighter. They wrestle box. It's a Sanford guy. Oh, he's good at everything. When I watch Evan Elder fight, it's not that he's good at everything. Yeah, he has a little bit of his takedown abilities. Yes, he has a submission win on his record. Evan Elder's a very good striker out of both stances. He's got some tidy little power shots, and he can kick to all three levels. But I haven't seen it against the greatest level of competition. I can say the same thing for Preston Parsons. I mean, look at his losses. Mike Perry by knockout when Preston Parsons was, 19? He's got a win when he was 20 over Ignacio Bahamondes by finish. Bahamondes was 18 at the time. And then he has a super short notice, like one of these 4-day notice fights against Daniel Rodriguez, and he gets finished in the first round. But Daniel Rodriguez is in the lower end of welterweight right now in the UFC, and if he didn't get injured, maybe he'd be up near the top. Who knows? But for Preston Parsons, natural welterweight, I know I'm framing this a certain way, but I have a hard time seeing Evan Elder beating Preston Parsons this week.
I agree 100%. The good thing about Parsons is that he might lack some of the amateur career that Evan Elder was able to have, but he's a far better grappler, and he does have a background in pure jiu-jitsu, and that's one of those things to where, okay, it's not really like an amateur MMA fight, but it's definitely a skill and an attribute that is wholeheartedly part of his game in MMA that I do think he'll be able to capitalize on in this fight, because, like you said for Evan Elder, he's had to defend some submission throughout his amateur career and professional career against some, let's just call them what they are, some subpar levels of competition, and some fighters who would not make it to the UFC. I'm not here to tell you that Preston Parsons can be around for a long time. I know I've said that before in some of his other videos, but I do think his submission ability does hold him at least above Evan Elder, and I do expect Preston Parsons, with his size advantage and with his overall grappling advantage, not only will he be able to hunt for a submission, but every single minute they're on the ground, I think he's going to be draining some of that cardio out of Evan Elder as the fight goes on. So I do expect Preston Parsons to have a good showing in this fight, but again, I don't think he has the highest ceiling of any UFC fighter we've seen in this division.
No, it's kind of like a Mickey Gall level to me. It really is. Like, the striking's come a long way for Preston Parsons. Same thing for Mickey Gall. Grappling base. I mean, for Parsons, he owns his own gym, has a lot of fighters
to Mike Perry.
Booked there at Elevate MMA. And if you look at it, we kind of touched on this when it was originally supposed to be Louis Cosi, who's out, and now Evan Elder. But for Parsons, Joaquin Buckley at the gym to train with for this camp, who really doesn't like Darren Till, I guess.
He'd love to get that fight, though.
There is that. And also at Austin Lane at the gym, big-time heavyweight, who has fought a who's who. But really, when I look at this one, I stack these two guys up. Evan Elder, much more polished, more technical striker. He takes a few liberties here and there, but overall, Elder the better striker. When it comes to wrestling and grappling, Preston Parsons. And then when it comes to the size advantage, Preston Parsons. Now, I'm eager to see these guys square up on Friday. We'll get a bit of a better look at Elder at welterweight, because he is not a welterweight. He's a lightweight. And for Preston Parsons, he's not a lightweight. He's a welterweight. So no odds on this one officially. The fight was just announced here on Wednesday night, not that long ago. We'll have a look at the Tapology vote, and I won't leave it up to a surprise because, again, no odds. And over there, only 200 votes, 57% Parsons, 34% by decision, 58% by submission for the 43% that have Elder, not really leaving much to the imagination, 38% by decision, 51% by knockout. So pretty well, it's going to go to a decision, Parsons by submission, or Elder by knockout. How do you see it?
I don't think Evan Elder's going to win by knockout. This is the only thing that I'll zag on a little bit in your description of him. I don't think he's a great striker. He might be a good striker, and I know we have to sell this somehow, but...
the technique is there.
But it's very wide. This is the problem. Every time Evan Elder throws a right hand, he tries to follow it with a left kick, either to the body or to the head. It's very Brandon Moreno against Kai Kara France-esque, but the difference is Brandon Moreno has absurd hand speed that can get him in and out of the pocket, and he was using the kick to almost get his head out of the pocket and respond with the kick. It's a preset combination for Evan Elder, and I do worry that if he does start to fight anyone who has... And again, we're talking about good striking at the UFC level. I don't think Preston Parsons is in that category yet. I do think his striking has been improving, but he's not the type of guy who can find this hole in your game and immediately capitalize on it. I do think Evan Elder leaves massive holes in his striking, though. Every time he throws, his hands come down, and he does take a little bit to rechamber that hand, so he's very lucky he's not fighting D-Rod in his UFC debut. I'll just say that. So I do like Preston Parsons, and especially for his grappling.
It would surprise the heck out of me if Elder decides to shoot on Parsons, and I've seen Elder shoot on some of these guys on the way up, and when he does, it is a little bit wide. He does leave his head out there a little bit. Like, it just scares me a little bit. So for me, looking at this fight, I'm going to go with the guy who was originally scheduled to take on a little bit of a brawler, a little bit of a striker in Preston Parsons, who was due for Louis Kosi. And listen, full transparency from both of us. We both had Kosi to beat Parsons, but in this one, looking like we're both going with Pressure Parsons.
It is.
Both of us going with Pressure Parsons to get his first UFC win. But you let us know down below in the comments section. Do we have this one completely off base? It's at Sanford MMA Zone. The Phenom, Evan Elder. Will he be able to go out there and get that win, continue the win streak, and continue the undefeated streak? Or will it be Pressure Parsons out of Elevate MMA to get the win and bring it back to Jacksonville? It's Jacksonville versus Deerfield Beach. Big time fight coming up this weekend that you will not want to miss. Listen, Romanov taking on a tricky guy in Chase Sherman in the main event. Lemos taking on Andrade. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.